Today we're going to talk about my experience in going for a fashion scholarship. Let's get started, shall we? Scholarships. Scholarships are very fun. It's essentially free money if you qualify and meet the standards of what the scholarship is for. If you are curious about scholarships, look into them. If you're a college student, you should be applying for scholarships. You absolutely should be. There's all this money that if no one applies for them, just goes away, never gets used. So please use the scholarship money. Having said that, let's get specifically into what I was saying. As I mentioned before in this channel, I went to Pasadena City College, and something that happens every spring is the VAMS scholarship. That's the Visual Arts and Media Studies division. That entire program that is in the art division essentially has a scholarship competition. I call it a competition because there's really only a few winners in every department, but there's specific rewards for fashion, for media, for art, for sculpting, and it's a huge opportunity to even just be able to participate in it. I participated in it twice, and the second time of it, I actually won. Spoiler alert! I wanted to talk about my experience in this scholarship and how I sort of prepared for it, how I became a part of it. So let's get to it. So essentially every spring the VAM scholarship happens. You have to apply for it. You have to have a certain GPA and good grades to qualify for it, and you have to be, I'm pretty sure you have to have taken certain levels of classes within the departments to qualify for it as well. I'm not so sure about that. Essentially is you are given the opportunity to submit looks where everyone in the department, not just yours, the entire visual arts and media division essentially judges your artwork and votes on it to potentially move forward to have a potential of being put into the end of the semester museum display of student work. And unfortunately, when I was there, the museum wasn't a possible thing. Unfortunately, none of my work got to be put in the gallery, which is really unfortunate, but it was still a really amazing opportunity to be a part of it. So how does it work? Essentially, specifically for us in the fashion department, you are allowed to enter a certain amount of art pieces. And in our cases, it's clothing. In my case, specifically, it's clothing and fashion illustrations. And my first time, I didn't really have the time to make looks or have very intriguing looks to look at. So I only submitted illustrations. Hindsight, of course, that wasn't going to get me anywhere further into this potential of winning the scholarship. So of course I didn't hear back whatsoever. But the second time around, I had this fire that I knew I was going to get this scholarship and I was going to work for it. So as soon as I found out it was happening, I started working on the projects. And I think now is when we start talking about the looks a little bit, so let's get to it. The first look that I did is actually a look that I made a while back ago, but there was some new iterations of it that I wanted to try in styling. I made this asymmetrical black trouser and a harness that matched it that I've actually worn on this channel before, and a white shirt that I made. This is sort of a denim suiting look that is inspired heavily by suiting, and I love denim. It's actually one of my favorite fabrics to work in. This look really encapsulates like what I'm really good at. I'm good at working in denim, and I'm good at working with shirting. So this entire look of this just black and white with the denim and the cotton shirting was really my look. And the styling of it with the lacing on the side. My model is actually my best friend Bobby, and she really turned this look, because let me tell you, that denim had no stretch in it. Realistically, it's denim used for like bags and coats and upholstery pieces, so I went with like a pretty heavyweight denim, but it's one of my favorite denims. Realistically, I should have done like a more wide leg baggier fit, but I went for a fitted slack. And if I can find detailed pictures of it, I actually really love the front of it because it is asymmetrical. Half of it has a waistband with pleats and the other half has darts sewn into it, and the pockets are at different levels. I love asymmetry in details. I don't think they need to be out and loud. I like them to be really subtle. Look 2, which I'm actually wearing parts of it. I wanted to do something that was upcycled. I wanted to take something that existed, tear it down to its pieces, and turn it into something new. And I love suiting, so I immediately was like, I'm going to use suit and ties. And this look is actually called Suit and Tie Me Up. Essentially what I created was I took apart a bunch of blazers and I sewed them together to create a Frankenstein mix matching of a blazer. And I also, which is this little piece, took a blazer and I cut it into these style lines that were more of like a harness slash vest, and I lined it in the leftover ties that I used to make this skirt. I had this idea of creating a tie fringe. As my model walked and moved, the ties would move like if they're fringe, and gave this really interesting layered effect. Of course, right now I'm wearing it as a top, which I've worn as a top before on this channel. But in this, she wears it like a skirt, and I've actually worn it like a skirt before too, just have never really had anything exciting to wear it to. But it's a fun look that I want to recreate again. This one's in red, but of course, but I want to create it in like a monochrome black, white, silver. I want to create it in like rainbow multicolor. I think it's something that I've worked with many times, and it is actually a look that I referenced in my Next in Fashion series, where I created a sort of woven tie top for a men's look. And it just ended up being perfect. Since it was made out of men's blazers, I'm able to wear the pieces. A design that inspired a whole collection idea. So I definitely loved where this challenge I was giving myself with this scholarship was taking my mind in a direction towards. Up next probably has to be my favorite look that I created. Continuing that idea of upcycling, I wanted to create a dress out of bandanas. Bandanas are an important thing to me and in the cultures I'm a part of. For Hispanics, bandanas have been worn in styling forever, and associated a lot with like cholo culture and gang culture. It's scary for some people. It's not for me. It just reminds me of my family and home, and that makes me feel a lot of things. And also in queer culture, bandanas are used to sort of flag things that you are interested in, like gray as bondage. I think lavender, for example, is like being interested in drag queens. I wanted to keep the color palette opposite from the blazer look. Since the blazer look I knew was going to be using a lot of red ties, for this bandana look, I wanted to use gray, blue, black, and white. Very, very different in opposition. And it took a really long time to get this together. It was a lot of hand sewing to make sure that these bandanas stood in the shapes that I wanted them to take. But this is one of my favorite looks. There's a shot of it where it just screams cover of a magazine. My model Bobby really, really turned it out for me, as she did with all these other looks. But this shot and this look has to be my favorite, because it was the look that it's the one look that I saw her in, and I looked within myself and said, wow, I made that. Hell yeah. It was just, it's such a cool look, and she modeled it perfectly, and it just, the entire vision came together perfectly. And it's definitely a look I would want to recreate one day in a more commercial setting, because I do think it is a really fun dress. Finally, we have my Frida Kahlo inspired look. This look was inspired by my culture, being Mexican, and my love for Frida Kahlo, and my love for sarape blankets. I love sarape blankets. I have one literally at the foot of my bed. They are so warm, they are so comfortable, they remind me of my people. So of course I'm gonna find a way to use them. And it was a bit of an unconventional material, because I essentially went to a fabric store and bought blanket material, cut it up and draped it in long sashes to create this robe that would go over a shirt dress that I also made. Create a nod to indigenous Mexico. There's this story of like Mexico and what it is, and I feel like we commonly associate with a certain type of look. If we go back historically even further, the indigenous people had always been there and had such a rich culture, and I wanted to sort of play a nod in that with creating a robe that had this long train out of this traditional material that has been used by Mexicans for such a long time. This look was also my women's history project. I did my women's history finale? I did my women's history final on Frida Kahlo, and the thing that I loved about my professor is she didn't just want a paper or a presentation. She wanted us to give a presentation on a woman, yes, but she wanted us to have a different approach to it. We could create anything we want, whether that's bring food, paint something, draw something, and in this case, one of my scholarship projects ended up fitting perfectly with this idea of Frida Kahlo. I had originally wanted something different. I wanted more of a fuller skirt, and I wanted to create like a pleated bodice with this sarape material. The sarape material would come undone and start unweaving anytime I would pin or pleat it into place. So I had to be very strategic in the way that I worked with it. So I essentially worked with really long sashes and layered them on top of each other and hand tacked them to create this shape. Final product and the photographs of it give this nod of like, a romantic Mexican story of this young woman. It's a look that I fell in love with, and it became my finale for my 4-look entry applying for this scholarship. And these looks, I made these looks also in the span of 2 weeks. So I was nonstop working on these while also working and going to school. I worked so hard on these. So the fact that not only did my hard work show, but it was rewarded with the scholarship, I felt over the moon. I was in my statistics class when I found out I won the scholarship, and I was so excited, and I had to go tell my professors, and they were so happy for me. I told my parents, they were happy for me, and it was a wonderful way to end my college experience there at PCC. Not only graduating from there, but also graduating with winning this scholarship that I previously in the past did not win. And I felt so overjoyed and excited that I was able to showcase my work, showcase my department, and win. With that, I hope you enjoyed these looks. I hope you enjoyed this little story time that we had. I hope that this has inspired you to apply for some scholarships and put the work in to really show that you deserve them. First of all, you actually have to do them. You actually have to have these ideas, execute them, and apply for these things. Because if you don't do it, you're only holding yourself back. So I implore you, I encourage you to apply for these scholarships. There's just money waiting in a freaking bank account. So please go and apply for this damn money. With that, I'm gonna go. It's been real. It's been fun. You take care. You have fun. Create some fun looks. Apply for scholarships and work hard. Bye!